Hello, everyone, and welcome to Think Like a Dog podcast, hosted by Andreia and Millie Travis. In this podcast, we discuss how to build the best relationship with your dog. From rescues to reactivity, we'll cover it all. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Think Like a Dog podcast. We are on episode 9, and we're here with Jill today. And she is actually a trainer at Mirror Image Canine, and she does all of the puppy classes there. So today we're going to talk all about puppies. And we're going to talk about what it means to train a puppy, what are the steps that you have to take. So we're going to start off, by talking about the common themes and some quick tips in puppy sessions, like what it means to have too much freedom in the house and the common mistakes that people make. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so the reason that Jillian does most of our puppies and kind of is our puppy connoisseur is because puppies need a lot of patience. And all dogs need a lot of patience, but especially puppies, you're not going to get the result tomorrow. Things aren't going to change. You're going to see all the work pay off probably a year or two later, right? Jillian is by far our most patient trainer and probably the most patient person I have ever met in my entire life. So she handles the puppies much better than I do. And I tend to also ruin the puppies because they're very, very cute. And I have been known to be kicked out of Jillian's puppy classes by Jillian because I go in there and I pick them up and I hold them and she tells me to put them down. So I guess probably I am part of the common themes of what and mistakes that you can make for puppies.
Yeah, I totally will do that too. Like I would never be able to be around all these puppies and just not get like sidetracked from them, or puppies are too damn cute. I don't know how you do it, Jill.
Yeah. I mean, so I think with the puppy classes, right? I think part of it is the owners who are there looking for information, right?
Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of common themes that we see when it comes to not only just the classes, but also the individual sessions, right? So, the same things that we see in adult sessions, just like kind of giving too much freedom to a puppy. That would be probably the first thing that I would see in a puppy session is somebody comes in and let's say they have a puppy who is struggling with potty training or chewing on the furniture or jumping on guests. Our thought process is always prevention, right? So, Jill and I train differently. We have different suggestions for the same things, but when it comes to too much freedom, it's always prevention. And people don't think a lot about a lot of the answers that we give them that are kind of simple, like a leash, or a big one is the crate. I mean, how many of your puppies that you see on a day-to-day, not even in your classes, but how many of them use the crate kind of how we teach them to when they first come to you?
Yeah, probably about half of them.
Okay, that's better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, probably half. A lot of people, well, I guess not to the extent that we want them to use it. A lot of people have a crate, but don't enforce nap times, don't enforce sleeping in there at night. Feeding in the crate, that's another one that I don't see often, that I think is really important.
And I think a lot of people use the crate too, especially with their puppies, but as a thing that prevents inconveniences to them, right? So it's when they're potty training or when they're chewing in the house or, the things that they're not supposed to be chewing on, that's where we use the crate. But we use it, and we've talked about this plenty of times in the podcast, but we use it as a coping mechanism and as a safe space. And with puppies, they get overwhelmed really, really easily, and they need a lot more naps than you think. And those naps should be taking place in the crate. Absolutely.
I mean, I know how hard it is. I have a very cute puppy that I'm trying to train right now. And although training my big dogs in crate or helping them understand what a crate is and placing them has been much easier for me than my little puppy, So it's something that when I'm home, like I was working from home last year when we got him. So it was very easy for me to just let him loose all the time. I didn't really feel like I needed to put him in the crate. So for those first few months that he was in our home, he was never in a crate. Never put him in the crate any of those months. So now I just got a crate probably a month ago. And he's been with us probably for 6 months, or so. And then I just got him a crate, and now he's trying to figure out what a crate is, and it's chaos. Like the first day I put him in the crate, he cried probably for a whole hour. And then now today was a really big day that I gave him like a dental chew and I put him in the crate, and he stayed there with the crate door open, and he was able to relax. So I do feel the pain of the puppy parents of having to go through that with your puppy. It's really hard, but we always talk about that. You have to choose your hard, right? You have to choose which hard you want. Like I didn't put him in the crate for the first few months, and now I'm dealing with that.
Yeah. So. I mean, that's exactly the what we see is, Jill might get a client who, the dog or the puppy has 0 rules and boundaries in the house, and there's 0 ways to turn the brain off, and there's just no crate time and a ton of freedom. And without intervention, I'm going to see that puppy inevitably in 2 years when it comes to reactivity or anxiety or anything, hyperactivity. We see a lot of that. A lot of dogs who just don't have any sort of negative intentions, but they just can't turn off. And that stems from puppyhood. That stems from not enough rules and boundaries and not enough information and a lot of freedom.
Right. And what I tell people all the time is it's so much easier to just start that first day when you bring them home, start with the crate, start with leash in the house, lots of rules and boundaries. So then you're not seeing all these, horrible behaviors in a few months or a year. It's a lot easier just to start from the beginning.
And the leash in the house is like such a simple thing that I think a lot of people don't think about. I mean, how many of your clients, when you say like, just have them drag a leash in the house or tether them even, are like, oh, I never thought about that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Your leash is your enforcer. Your leash is the thing that's allowing you to not kind of manhandle your dog, but guide them throughout your house and give those rules and boundaries throughout your house.
Right. I get people all the time, especially like working on place. They say, oh, I put my dog on place, but he just runs and hides in another room. And I'm like, okay, well, if you had a leash on them or you tethered them, it's going to be a lot easier to reinforce place.
I never thought about that until you guys started, giving me the guidance. Max, when he came to us, he was, 6 months, big puppy. For 6-month-old puppy. He had a lot of energy. He was one of those hyperactive dogs because the first few months of his life, he didn't receive any structure. He was basically just put in a crate by the previous owners, and they closed the garage door and let him there to just bark, bark, bark. So he craved that attention so much when he came to us that he just wanted to do everything he couldn't do. And they didn't teach him that the crate was a good place to be. They taught him that was the bad place to be. So he was very afraid of the crate. He was very hyperactive. So when he came home, the first thing he did when we brought him home is he took a massive pee in my rug. And all I had to do is just roll up that rug and throw it away because it was a massive, 1 minute long pee. He just stood there.
That's nice of him.
And, I'm like, dude, you're so big. What is going on? But he's 6 months old. He wasn't taught potty trained or anything. And when he was in the house, it was a challenge. Like this dog, he would want to go upstairs, downstairs, to my bedroom, jump in my bed. If I left any doors open, he would roam in. He would be going to that room. He would go in the pantry. And I was constantly screaming and trying to figure out, tell him what to do and put him in the crate for a little bit. He would start barking. So it was chaos. And then finally we started to, teach him, give him guidance. And when I put the lead on him while he was here, I was able to give him that guidance without using my voice so much because we don't realize dogs don't understand English most of the time. And we scream and tell them and talk to them like they can hear and understand every single word we say. And when we find that's not effective, we get frustrated. They get frustrated. And it's just that energy that's really unbalanced. So when I had the lead on him and I would just pick up the lead, not say a word, put him on place and do that at least like 3 times, then he would get it. He's like, all right, this is where I need to be. Because I would sit down to eat, and I sent Millie's videos of this at first. He would just sit there and bark at me. So I would be so like in panic that I would just stand up and eat standing and walking around so he couldn't just sit there and bark at me. So once you figure out, like when you're going through that like learning process with your dog, the lead is so important. It was for me, like just leaving the lead on him for that period of time. It doesn't need to be like all the time, because obviously you can, give them some freedom when there needs to be freedom, but the lead really helped me. So
yeah, I think with puppies, it's less about, I think on average, people bring home a new puppy and they know, right? They know that there's going to be issues with a puppy. It's a puppy. It's brand new to this earth. It's not going to just be perfect in your home. People, I believe, are mentally prepared for that. I've never had somebody who had too high expectations for their puppy, right? But I think people do what we call, at least, our team call chasing the behavior, right? So they wait for the puppy to mess up almost, instead of doing things like prevention and not explaining in English, but, providing expectations to the puppy of, this is where you're allowed. This is what you're allowed to chew on. This is what you're not allowed to chew on. This is when you go to the bathroom. It's just giving them this information, but people bring a puppy home and then they're like, okay, I know they're going to do bad things and we should probably pull up all the rugs and put all the shoes on the top shelf and do all of this. And they prepare for the puppy to do bad things. And regardless of how much you prevent, the puppy will do something. But it's about prevention. It's how to teach your puppy. And that's what you do in your rules and boundaries class, in your puppy class of, these are the boundaries that we need to provide to the puppy that allow them to understand this is what this is what's off limits before they ever even try it.
Right. Yeah. One of my topics, that I talk about in my rules and boundaries class is counter surfing. And that one I go over really quickly because I say, well, if you're taking all the right steps, and being intentional with your puppy, they shouldn't have the chance to even be on your counters or in your kitchen or wherever.
Yeah. I say that all the time, not only in my sessions, but in puppy sessions too, when they say, well, my puppy is chewing on the furniture or peeing in a different room or whatever it is. And my immediate thought is, well, why is there an opportunity for that? Especially as a puppy, there shouldn't be the opportunity to do, as many bad things as we see coming in with our clients, because it's not, the puppy doesn't know. It's just kind of figuring out the world around them. They don't know.
So when you first bring a puppy home, let's say they're 8 weeks and you bring them home, we all know potty training. Maybe if you incorporate the crate at that time while you're potty training, would you just put on the leash on them at that time, or would you wait for them to get a little bit older? Like, when would you implement the leash?
I say you can start, as soon as you bring them home. It's just about kind of breaking it down for a puppy. So maybe that means starting inside your house, just putting on the slip lead and adding a little bit of pressure in different directions and seeing if they can follow that.
I think that's a great idea. And then also, I think not only the leash, but do you have a typical, I think actually this would be a great question to ask in your puppy classes of what was your first night with your puppy like? What did you do when you first brought your puppy home? What was the first thing that you did?
Yeah.
And most people probably invited all of their friends over.
Right.
They let the puppy do whatever it wanted. And they were so excited that the puppy maybe slept with one of the kids or, didn't get time to decompress. And I think I wish we had the opportunity to talk to people before they get the puppy and this is what you should do when you bring them home. But it rarely goes like that. Rarely.
The first night that I brought Louis home, our youngest, he was very spontaneous. Like, we found out about him that same day we went to get him because he was a rehoming case, and we brought him home. He was kind of he was fairly new to the crate, but he did cry a lot that first night. So Ozzy and I had a big back and forth because I wanted him to continue in the crate, but Ozzy's like, no, put him in bed so he can stop crying and we can go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And, for that first week, we did have him in the crate at night, which I feel helped a lot with Louie and Poochie, since they're both small dogs. Poochie has a lot of, he feels like everything belongs to him. So putting Louie in the crate for that first week at least helped. But then we took the crate away, and then they both went in bed. And now we're starting to see with Poochie, our first dog, that he's getting, a little bit more territorial with things and kind of snapping at Louie a little bit more. So for me, I feel like now at this point, I need to reinforce crate. And then I also need to add the slip lead on at least Louie, because he doesn't understand like off limits. I still have a baby gate in my house, guys.
I have a baby gate in my house, but it's more for the cats than anything.
Yeah, no, my dogs don't understand yet. So I try to keep them from going upstairs, and I really need to step back and add that lead to when they're in the house as well. Because it's never too late, I feel like, for you to start giving them direction, and it's going to make your life so much easier when you do. We all make mistakes, with each dog, and they're all so different. So they all need different information from us. But with the lead, I feel like it's a miracle. Like once you start to utilize that and you learn that you don't have to use your voice as much, you don't have to get, worried of what your dog is doing. Because when they're in the lead, they're either next to you, they're on place, you're telling them what they need to do.
Well, and that's a big safety thing too that I always mention is, if your puppy is out, yes, it should have a slip lead on it, but it should also be supervised. And I think that's probably a big theme that we see of puppies non-supervised. They came home 2 weeks ago and now this puppy's in a different room and nobody knows what it's doing. My dog, when he was a puppy, he never had that opportunity to just he barely does now, to be in another room and we don't know what he's doing. But I think the safety part of it is don't have any sort of leash on your dog if you are not watching them, if you don't know where they are, because you don't want that to get caught on something and then either, something awful happen to your house or your dog. But I think a lack of supervision is probably a big theme, I'm assuming, in your classes.
Yeah, for sure.
And then not enough use of the crate and of the leash, or at least of rules and boundaries.
Right. And I hear a lot people ask, okay, well, they're good in the crate now, so when can I get rid of it? When can they sleep in my bed? And what I think about that is if you have something that your dog likes and it helps them cope with stress or whatever it may be, why take it away? And like Millie says, a crate is kind of like a bedroom. Think about taking your kid's bedroom away. That would be weird.
They like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the crate stays forever. And when can they sleep in your bed? At least until like 2 years old and no behavioral issues. Definitely not while they're a puppy or still, going through separation anxiety or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, puppies sleep 16 to 18 hours a day. That's probably one of the facts that I get for my puppy owners that are like, whoa. Mm-hmm. That's how much sleep they need. And that sleep should be taking place in the crate, especially if your puppy is 8 weeks to, what would you say, like 4 or 5 months old.
Yeah.
I mean, your puppy needs a nap time in the middle of the day. I mean, I need a nap time in the middle of the day. But 16 to 18 hours out of 24 hours is when that's how much sleep your puppy needs when they're growing, when they're learning the world around them, especially the first week that they come home. Mm-hmm. They're taking in a lot of information. Don't throw too much at them too soon.
Right. And I'd mentioned that fact in my puppy class this morning. And someone said to me, okay, well, they never want to sleep. I can put them in their crate, but they're not going to go to sleep. And what I always compare that to is if you took a toddler to Disney World, they're going to want to stay awake all day, ride all the rides, but they're going to start getting cranky and that they need a nap. So it's about just making that decision for them and putting them in the crate, giving them that time to take a nap and, letting them cry it out. If it's 2 hours, then fine, but they need a nap regardless.
Yeah. We see a lot of behavioral issues happen when the puppy's tired. Right. So, I don't know if you get this too, Jill, but I get a lot of like around 8 or 9 o'clock, my puppy goes insane, right? So we get the zoomies around 8 or 9 o'clock where the mouthing gets really bad. And normally I say, well, when was the last time the puppy had a nap? I mean, if if this dog has been awake, if this 4-month-old dog, let's say, has been awake from 10 a.m. to 9 o'clock, yeah. I mean, that puppy is going to go crazy because it's just exhausted. So most of the time when we see really intense mouthing, and I'm not saying that, you're sitting there with your puppy and they start mouthing you and you just immediately put them in the crate. I always want you to work through that a little bit. You gotta learn how to call it at the right time, work through it a little bit, and then recognize, okay, you need a nap because this is happening because you're tired. Most puppies are not getting the amount of sleep that they need per day.
So when you introduce the crate, how long would you say it would take for that puppy to kind of start getting used to it? You're telling a new puppy parent, like, all right, give it, how long will they really start to feel a little bit more comfortable in the crate?
Yeah, I mean, it can take anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months, depending on how you go about it. So if during the day, if your puppy starts barking and you go and let it out of the crate because you're worried about them, then crate training is going to take a lot longer. But if you're able to kind of let them cry it out, you're practicing crate time while you're home, while you're not home, while there's things going around in that room, then it's going to go a lot quicker.
That's important too, right? So crating shouldn't just be when you're gone or when you're asleep or, for 10 minutes twice a day while you feed them. Crating should be you're in the same room or maybe you get up to leave and get a drink of water or clean your house. I want that dog to be able to relax in the crate regardless of what's going on around them. But Jill is right. If you consistently take your dog out of that crate when they are super intense or barking or crying, it's going to take a lot longer. I mean, both of you know with Kemper, he's 2 years old, right? But from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock every night at day camp, he screams. But that's because inevitably I have to go home, right? Yeah. So every night while he's whining and screaming, I go in and I take him out and we go home. Yes, he goes in the crate when we get home, but it's a different crate. So yeah. It's really difficult when you get in that pattern of the puppy screams and then the puppy gets taken out of the crate, and even more so, puppy gets taken out of the crate and put in bed. Why wouldn't they scream the next night?
And with the weight, like when you put the puppy in the crate, like how would you go about that? Should you kind of lure them in the crate or just put them in there? Like how would you introduce them going in the crate?
I probably wouldn't spend, like with a new puppy, I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time desensitizing them to it. I would probably put them in the crate, shut the door, let them figure out their emotions, let them cry it out or sleep or whatever it may be, and then take them out once they're more quiet, less intense. And then to desensitize them, I guess, I would leave the crate door open throughout the day so they're able to go in and out and kind of explore it. You could put some blankets in there if they're not having trouble with going to the bathroom in the crate.
Or chewing, yeah.
Yeah, chewing. Yeah.
And how about a maybe like, let's say Louie, I would say
this is turning into a training session.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be a training session for me today. I'm like, let me take a lot of advantage of this podcast. So let's say with him, I just reintroduced the crate. He's very cute. He's a very cute dog. So it was really hard.
That's important to the training.
It was so hard for me to reintroduce that crate. Mm-hmm. And I got him in the crate. And what I've tried to do is give him something like a reward for them only in the crate. So if I have something yummy, I give it to him there. Is that okay to do or should you not make him feel like he's going to get a treat every time he goes in there?
I probably wouldn't create that expectation that every time they go in the crate, they're going to get something, because ultimately they're not. I might forget one day or whatever. And then I don't want them to scream when one day I forget to put a treat in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's less about, I don't mind people giving treats every once in a while when they're in the crate. I also don't mind doing what she was saying, we don't normally desensitize puppies to the crate, but maybe an adult dog who's had a really negative experience in the crate, or at least taught that if they, freak out, they get to come out. Yeah, we'll spend some time doing some crate drills is what we call them. So in the crate, we say the word crate, use the leash to bring them in the crate, then treat, and then allow out. And we kind of build the impulse control around that. But I think what matters more when it comes to crate training is a schedule, a routine, a ritual. And over time, you are going to see your dog not throw that big of a fit, because it's just the expectation is at night at this time, I go in my crate and then I don't come out until this time the next morning, or I eat in here, or I take a nap in here every single day. It's less about the reward of going in there and more just about the routine.
Louis, he's very calm. Like his personality is very calm. He's very submissive. He lets Poochie do whatever he wants. Like he never kind of goes against Poochie. So he has a really great temperament. But I started to notice, because we never introduced him to the crate or let him get used to it, although he's a great dog, he's not destructive. He doesn't have any behavioral issues.
He's a nervous dog.
But he's nervous when he gets in the car. And then once we leave and I put him in the crate, he freaks out. So I was like, all right, I'm setting him up for failure because he can't be with me all the time. And every time we put him in the car to transport him anywhere, whether that is to my mom's house or if we're trying to go get something to eat and he's coming with us, he's like hyperventilating the whole time. So that's that, expectation of being home all the time, being in the same environment and just being in his safe place with us here. But that's not the reality.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we talk about all the time with the expectations is, what's this going to be like in a year from now? What happens, if it's a couple who has a puppy and maybe, they're giving a ton of affection, which we talk about. I mean, how often do you have to talk about affection with your puppy owners? Right?
A lot. Usually the first couple seconds they walk in the room, I see it start.
It's not that we, obviously, it's not that we say don't give your dog affection, but I look at, when and what situations are you doing that? And what's the amount? And can you keep that the rest of that puppy's life, right? So are you creating this expectation that affection will come in every single moment that you are around? Because what happens if you're working on your laptop or you're holding a baby or whatever, you're cooking? You're not going to be able to turn around and always be petting your dog. And I also think probably, I normally get kicked out of puppy classes, so I'm assuming there's probably a lot of petting when they're nervous.
Right.
Yeah. And which builds an insecure dog.
So tons of affection and never being apart, that does create that anxiety. And I started to experience that with Louie. And trust me, it's not easy to ask yourself, those questions like, are you setting your puppy up for failure because you're giving them too much affection? And how can you step away from that? It's not easy to step away from that, but you have to do it for your puppy, because then you're just not setting them up for success. They can't always be around you. And although you feel like, okay, they have anxiety when I leave, and I only hear that or experience that anxiety for a few minutes when I'm leaving, but they're experiencing that for hours after you leave. So you have to be realistic with yourself, with your puppy. And that's where I had to step in, because although I was crate training all my big dogs, like I was on that routine, I got Rusty. He was like has severe anxiety from the crate. He had a terrible experience from being in the crate, and I was able to work him through that, more and more. And then on the other side, I was having a very hard time crate training Louie, because for me, he's such a little puppy and he's so fragile, and I didn't want to put him in there, and I felt like I didn't want him to suffer. And that's where one day I had to text Millie. I'm like, Millie, I need puppy classes help. I need something, because I was having such a hard time. And she's like, you can do this. Nothing's gonna happen to him.
He also has the cutest little impact crate, and I would be so sad if you didn't use it. Like, it's the cutest little military green impact crate. It's small, it's adorable. So you have to use it.
Yeah.
But you said, we talked already about what are some themes that on the people side, on the owner side, that they miss, right? Jill, what are some skills that you think puppies aren't taught at an early age? Like, what are some things that you have to urge owners, okay, this is actually a skill that will be necessary later on in life, but they sort of have missed it?
I think place is a big one. Crate, anything that can be used as like a coping mechanism. So if one day your dog does get nervous about some new thing that they see, they're going to have those coping mechanisms already that they know to go to.
What about like exercise wise? How do you think people play with their puppies versus like the skills that they're teaching when they are playing with their puppies versus spending that time on place? Why would that matter?
Yeah, so structured play is really important. You're giving your dog an on and off switch. So, for example, with fetch, slowing the entire game down and starting from, the first time you grab the ball, you get the ball out, you make it very calm, neutral, and then you bring your dog outside, do a threshold before you walk
Yeah.
outside. Have them wait before you throw it. They go and get it. You ask them to drop it. That's a big skill that I
Yeah.
think a lot of people miss until one day their dog has something that they're not supposed to have and they won't drop it.
Yeah. I think it's when people do say, okay, yes, I'm crating my dog, and my dog is crated at night and nap times and all of this. In my experience, I notice people, yeah, they're crating their dog, but when their dog is out, their dog is doing anything that it wants, or we're working to make this puppy tired so that we can go and put it back in its crate rather than teaching that puppy how to be out. So, I mean, I think one of the skills that I see not only in puppies, but in adult dogs too, that they weren't taught how to do is how to do nothing, right? And that's really what place is. And I think, let's say your puppy has all the best intentions in the world and loves everybody. People, when they are babies, right, they think, okay, my cute little puppy, they want to go and see my new friend. Of course, I'm going to let that happen. But we never teach impulse control. And now, let's say it's a large breed puppy. A year from now, that's a 100-pound dog jumping on every single person that they see. I think we tend to overstimulate puppies in order to get them tired so that we can have a break rather than just doing it at first the hard way, and teaching them how to just be chill, like tethering them kind of near place, or doing what we call the sit on the dog exercise. You're not actually sitting on your dog though. I always tell people that. and I think that controlling the level of play, but I notice a lot of people are like, yeah, we play really, really hard. And then my puppy, passes out, crate time, wakes back up. We play really, really hard again. And it's just a lot of overstimulation for a little baby puppy.
So what would you say with pet owners that are dealing with like excessive jumping, excessive barking from that puppy? What are some key points that they need to avoid or look out for, like avoid doing like a natural reaction, or what should they do at that moment when their puppy is experiencing that excessive jumping, barking, being overstimulated when a person walks into a room?
Yeah, one thing I see a lot when people's puppies jump up on them is they immediately reach down and pet it. And it's kind of like it's a habit. Your dog jumps on you and you think, oh, okay, I'm going to pet them. And then it'll calm them down for a minute. Maybe they'll get down. They're not going to bark at me. You could also walk into the dog instead of moving away. Usually it bothers people more when their puppy is big. So walking into them instead of turning away to kind of shield yourself.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the easiest thing is spatial pressure. And we don't realize like how easy it is for you to just walk into a dog and they get it.
Right.
You don't have to like teach them spatial pressure. They understand spatial pressure. It's like natural to them.
I think that's, it's so important to address the things like jumping and mouthing and all of that to make sure that we interrupt those behaviors. But once again, I think the biggest common theme that I see is no prevention. And you're just sort of leaving that puppy up to do whatever. So, when Kemper was a puppy and Jill would come over to my house, he would be on place and he would not be allowed to leave place until he was calm. And so now when he sees somebody outside, and he is kind of a nervous Nelly when it comes to people, when he sees somebody outside, his initial kind of like inclination is go to place, right? I'm safe here. Nobody messes with me here. But I first had to teach that with people that he really, really liked and really wanted to go see. But when the vacuum's on, he goes to place because he knows nobody messes with me here. I'm safe here. I can turn my brain off here. But when they're puppies, we want everyone to come and pet our puppy. We want everyone to come and see our puppy. We want our puppy to go play with everyone. And that's a huge probably thing that you talk about, at least in your classes too, is socialization. And what does it look like? What are the expectations of a puppy with socialization?
Right. Yeah. A lot of people, when they hear socialization, they think playing with other puppies. If I do let my puppy play with another dog, I don't necessarily always want it to be another puppy. I think letting them play with an adult dog teaches them a lot more than playing with a puppy, because the adult dog is going to give them more rules and boundaries. They have a lot better of a play style than another puppy would.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you do. Like when we have a bunch of puppies for day camp, she'll take them, well, not all of them. She'll take like one and a couple adult dogs and go into the training room. And that puppy is not just going to learn how to play and then get exhausted after. That puppy is going to learn manners from these adult dogs, not because we're letting the adult dogs like be mean. It's just the adult dogs aren't going to go get as rowdy as another puppy would with them. So I don't want a puppy growing up thinking, okay, I see another dog and the expectation is that I get to play with that dog. Not, okay, maybe I need to read the dog. Maybe I need to just walk past the dog. I think that's huge too. As people take their puppy on a walk, and anybody who says, oh, this dog is cute or your puppy's cute, they go, do you want to pet him? Can my puppy meet your puppy? Mm-hmm. And I think we don't practice the skill of, yeah, he's really cute, but we're in training. Let's keep walking. Yeah. And then a year later, you've got a 100-pound dog pulling you towards every single puppy and human that you see.
So when you first start working with a puppy parent that walks into your puppy classes, what would you say would be some good tips on potty training and schedule? Like when you're first teaching them that schedule and potty training, what are some good tips for them to go through?
Yeah, so for everyone's schedule is different. So not everyone's schedule is going to look exactly the same. So I say find a schedule that works for you. And I always start with, okay, your puppy sleeps in the crate at night. And then they wake up, you take them outside, put them back in the crate to have breakfast, and then you kind of go from there. After you let them out of the crate to go back out, if they need to go back out to the bathroom, if they don't go to the bathroom, then they go back in the crate. And then once they do go to the bathroom, that's when they're allowed to have be out and about with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem is with potty training is there's no, it's not that it needs to be a consistent schedule because your day-to-day schedule is going to change. But we don't make sure that the puppy has gone to the bathroom outside before we give it a little bit of freedom inside. Mm-hmm. So that means that the puppy's going to go to the other room and go to the bathroom.
Do you typically tell people to use like a special word for potty? Like I always tell my dogs like potty, and they do. I don't know if they get it but Max, when I tell him potty, he potties. I don't know if that works or not, but does it? Like, do you have to use like a special word for potty breaks or does it really matter?
I personally don't tell people to do any specific word. I think one thing that's really important is taking your dog to kind of around the same spot and then just planting your feet. They get the length of the leash to sniff around and go to the bathroom, and then not giving them like 30 minutes at a time. A lot of people tell me like, oh, I took them out for like 35 minutes and they still didn't go to the bathroom. That's when I would put them back in their crate and then try again later.
And we're not putting them back in their crate forever. It's 15 minutes right. And then you try again, right? Okay. And so there's not a lot of free reign. But I mean, I think a big thing is that people think that they need to use, it's a command, right? But I think every time I went to go pee, somebody said a word and gave me a treat after, it wouldn't make me have to pee eventually, right? So it's less about the words that you use and more just the routine. So I think Jill's right, kind of take them to the same spot every single time. I get a lot of like, yeah, I was outside for 30 minutes, but then I also get a lot of, oh, I don't watch them when they're outside. Yeah. If you don't watch them, you don't know what they're doing. And so you don't know if they still have to go to the bathroom when they come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now as you're going on a walk too, I think this is important to mention. When you're doing like a structured walk with your puppy, that's really important to practice. But how should you go about like potty breaks and walks? Should like the walk be a whole potty break, or should you determine when the potty break is within your walk?
That's something I've been hearing a lot lately. People like calling the walk and a potty break the same thing. So for a structured walk, I would take the dog outside to go potty beforehand. So stand in your yard, plant your feet, that thing, and then go on your walk. Because it's sometimes hard for people to know when their dog is sniffing just because they're interested in what's around them, or sniffing because they have to go to the bathroom. Same thing with like marking behaviors. You want to make sure that their bladder is empty, so your dog isn't marking on every mailbox they see, and you know that, okay, he doesn't have to go to the bathroom, so I'm not going to let him go to the bathroom there.
Jill, I have a question for this too, and this is a genuine question. Okay, so yes, part of the reason that Jill does puppies is because she is way more patient than I am, but also because I can be a little bit of a perfectionist and a little bit of a pusher, right? So when it comes to puppies, I'm really bad at being like, you know what? You're a puppy. It's okay, right? It's not going to be perfect today. So for a structured walk for a puppy, what are some things that it's going to look different than maybe an adult dog who's been practicing that for a little while? Like after a first session, when would you be like, this is as good as we're going to get today?
I think some like distraction is them being distracted is really common. I don't get super upset about a puppy looking around or getting distracted. And all of that is normal, but I make sure that the owner knows what to do in those moments and how to grow from there. Making sure if the puppy gets scared on the walk when a car goes by, that they're not reaching down and petting the puppy or stopping the walk completely.
What would be your different expectations when you're like teaching a puppy and teaching an adult dog that you just like adopted? You don't know their behaviors yet. You don't know if they're good at potty training. Like should you just start as if you're training a puppy if that's your newly adopted adult dog?
Sort of. I would still probably start with like baby steps. I would probably allow a lot less room for like just the random potty, like unless they have any kind of medical issues, like the random potty breaks in the middle of the walk or the barking during the walk. I think it just kind of depends on the case.
It depends on the energy, right?
Right.
I think the biggest difference would be for babies. I'm going to make those things like my goals for each of those sessions tiny.
Yeah,
tiny goals. Like all I want is for you to look up at me.
For sure. Sometimes when I'm teaching the walk, we don't even really leave the driveway.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. So it's more about goals, like the goals you're setting for that dog at that time frame. Because puppies, you're not going to set as many goals as you would for an adult dog that's developed, matured, all those things. Okay, got it. So when you are doing, what would you say is appropriate puppy class versus like individual sessions? When would you recommend someone to do a puppy class versus individual?
Yeah, I think it depends on your goals and where you're at in your training journey. I think, when you first bring your puppy home, I don't think that's immediately time for a puppy class. I think you'd benefit a lot more from an individual session where we can do a lot of talking and a lot of evaluating your personal schedule. Because in my puppy class, I go over everyone's schedule a little bit, but I don't dive deep enough into it.
What I say when people call and ask about puppy classes, I normally say, I would set up, if it's a baby puppy, one individual session first with Jillian, and then she can tell you, do we need another one before puppy class? But I like to use the puppy class as a way to practice all of these things around excitement, around distractions. But your puppy class that I get kicked out of is so different than what you might find at PetSmart and any, kind of chain stores. It's because it's small and your goal is calm. Right? You don't let them play.
It's really important to start off your puppy with, in a great environment. So you don't have to work through them unlearning those unhealthy behaviors, right? So a lot of people I remember when I first got Poochie, someone said, yep, get him into a daycare training or not training. They said daycare plan just so he can be around other dogs. It's fun. It's great. So people think like, let me take my dog to this boarding or daycare facility at least once a week so they can be around other dogs because I feel bad. I only have one dog and they want to play. You have to don't put them in that environment where nobody's going to be advocating for them, right? I feel like it's really important to think about.
Just as important as it is for puppies to have socialization. I mean, we see a lot of problems for puppies that don't have any socialization and are stuck at home with just the humans and are never around dogs. Those are the dogs that come to see me at 2 years old, right? But the problem is that if you choose, and there are some amazing daycares, they really are, but if you choose like your average one that has part-time high school students kind of working there and playing with the dogs and just there to sort of break up fights, then your dog is kind of going into a fight club, that's how we feel about the dog park. It's your puppies kind of, yes, they're around other dogs, but what are they learning when they're around those other dogs? So when Jill's puppies saying the word puppy a lot. When Jill's puppy class puppies come to day camp, our first thing is teach them how not to interact before we teach them how we want them to interact. So then that way they have a way to opt out if they ever want to.
So I think it's important too for people to think about when looking for a daycare or, not boarding, but daycare facility, look for one that is a training camp, not just daycare, playground, structured day camp.
Same with your puppy classes. Look for one that's not just about learning how to play and you're walking into 20 dogs. Because the tops that you have is 5 or 6 at your puppy class?
Usually 6 is like the max.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're taking so much in for you to walk into a room with like 20 puppies. How much are they really going to learn?
Yeah, especially like with the high numbers. I don't like that because, like I said, with only 5-6 people, I am able to kind of talk about people's schedules with them and go and look at every individual puppy, make sure no one's really struggling with anything.
The small group kind of allows everyone to support each other and get to know the other one. And so I'll watch and you'll be doing like the jump boxes or the obstacle course to learn leash pressure. And everyone's like cheering the other puppies on. It's the cutest sweetest little family that she creates every week or every month with new members. It's just
for sure
awesome. It's so cool.
All right. Well, I feel like today we talked a lot about puppies and puppy classes, potty training, crate training, expectations, schedule. So I feel like we can really close this episode out feeling pretty good about all the information we shared. So in the next episode, we are also going to talk to Jill, and we're going to talk more in depth about grooming and vet visits, which is a whole thing, again, when it comes to that. Yeah, I've had many, many experiences with grooming that I'll have a lot to say about that. So in the next episode, we'll talk about grooming and vet visits. So thank you, Jill, for joining us in this podcast today. And we'll see you next time. And don't forget,
practice makes progress. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Think Like a Dog Podcast and follow at Mirror Image Canine for training tips. If you have any questions, please reach out to us via email at info@thinklikeadogpodcast.com.